change of decades of U.S. foreign policy with the visit of Israel's prime minister to the White House.
I'm looking at two-state and one-state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one. I thought for a while the two-state looked like it may be the easier of the two. But honestly, if Bibi and if the Palestinians, if Israel and the Palestinians are happy, I'm happy with the one they like the best. As far as the embassy moving to Jerusalem, I'd love to see that happen. We're looking at it very, very strongly. We're looking at it with great care, believe me, and we'll see what happens.
News was made in the East Room yesterday, and that's where we will see the press conference with President Trump in about a half an hour from now. We expect more news to be broken. In the meantime, Jonathan Schanzer is joining us, Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and a former terrorism analyst at the Treasury Department. So a lot to, kind of work through over what we're seeing as far as the foreign policy of this new administration. Everyone's trying to figure out, where does President Trump stand? Let's just take this bit by bit. What is the two-state solution that everyone is referring to that has long been a decades-long policy of the United States?
Sure. Well, the two-state solution is born out of the Oslo process that began in the early 1990s. It was a process where both the Israelis and the Palestinians came together and said that they wanted to divide up this territory into two states. It was a landmark agreement that was ultimately sealed on the White House lawn under Bill Clinton. Since that time, things have gotten complicated. There was an attempt to seal the deal in the year 2000 that devolved into violence.
And when you say seal the deal, what do you mean?
They were going to sign a final status peace agreement.
So that's still missing.
That is still missing. It has been missing from the beginning, and there was always concern that the Palestinians were not ready to yield on certain core issues like Jerusalem, like refugees, and even borders. The Israelis gave them a terrific deal in 2000. It was brokered by Bill Clinton, and that ultimately fell apart. The Israelis tried again under Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. That failed as well. And so the Palestinians have rejected this time and again, and the Israelis have kind of, at least right now, don't really see this as a viable option. They haven't given up on it entirely, but they don't see a partner.
So how big of a deal is it to have a new president say, we're going to try something different?
Well, I'm not sure exactly that he said that we're going to be doing something different. I mean, if you heard the president yesterday, he talked about how the Israelis needed to compromise. And there was sort of a little bit of joking back and forth between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu.
And how did you read that? Because there was a little bit of I don't know if you're going to like this, Prime Minister Netanyahu. And Prime Minister Netanyahu kind of looked at President Trump like, I don't know if I'm going to like what you're saying. How did you read that exchange between them?
I read it as if the two men are not entirely in lockstep, and I think that what the president was saying is that he wanted to get a deal done. A deal would likely mean two states, and then we heard this sort of afterthought about one state or two state, and so I think there's still some confusion. I think it's going to be important to get some clarity from the president in the days to come.
So how does this question about what sort of a solution that this administration might be putting forward, how does it play into the broader story about what's good for America in the Middle East and how to bring our allies closer and put our adversaries on watch?
So we have a lot in common with the Israelis, obviously a lot of antipathy toward the Iranian regime and concern about their nuclear ambitions and their regional activity, a lot of concern about ISIS and I would just say radical Islam more broadly. And then there's sort of an interesting thing that came up in yesterday's press conference as well, that both men were talking about a possible regional peace agreement that might include the Saudis, the Emiratis, the sort of broader Arab world that has drawn closer to Israel as a result of Obama's foreign policies.
And what do you make of that?
Well, we've been hearing about it for a long time, that there have been sort of, let's just say that the Saudis and the Israelis have drawn a lot closer than anyone would have possibly imagined. And this is the direct result of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, where both of these parties were extremely unhappy.
So when you say the Obama administration was the catalyst of this, you're saying it was the catalyst because they supported the nuke deal and these countries didn't like it?
That's right. It was inadvertent. I don't think they were intending to draw the Saudis and the Israelis together. together, but they were so alarmed over what the Obama administration did in empowering Iran that they drove these two sides to realize that they were in fact allies when it comes to Iran. Very unlikely story.
Just quickly here, I only have about 30 seconds. What are you watching for next?
I'm watching for some clarity on the on this two-state, one-state solution thing, but there was one big thing that came out yesterday, and that is that Netanyahu asked for Trump to recognize Israel's sovereignty in the Golan Heights, which is disputed territory on the Syrian border.
Interesting. And what that means about both of their stances towards Syria and what's happening, and whether or not it remains an intact country is probably part of the bigger picture there. Jonathan, thank you very much.